the wind carried whispers of war. It swept through the valleys of Mount Masaba, rustling the banana groves and stirring the dust of well-trodden paths. The elders at Tulienge felt it before they heard it, much like cattle sensing an approaching storm. The distant cries of warriors training in the fields, the sharpened spears glinting under the morning sun, these were moments of a reckoning overdue.
In the community.
For generations, the Babukusu had flourished in the land surrounding Mount Masaba, which is now today Mount Elgon, a proud people bound by their traditions and resilience. Their way of life was deeply rooted in the land, their wealth measured in cattle, and their wisdom passed down the ceremonies such as Hoswala Komuse, which are the naming ceremonies, and Huminya, the initiation rites. These rituals ensured the continuity of their identity, forging an unbreakable connection between past and present. But peace was fragile. The rivers Malakisi and Hamukoya, which had long nourished their fields and livestock, had also carried the cries of war. Conflict with neighboring communities, especially the Bamia, which are the Iteso, had shaped the Bukusu into formidable warriors, ever vigilant in defense of their land. Their fighters drew strength not only from skill and courage, but also from the foresight of seers such as Situma son of Wanaumbwa, whose visions guided their path in war and peace. At the heart of Bukusu resilience stood Tulienge, a village nestled at the foot of Mount Masaba. More than a settlement, it was the lifeblood of their people, a place where warriors were forged, stories were passed down, and the past was never forgotten. And now, as the war drums began to sound, Tulienge stood at the crossroads of history. For beyond the plains of Hamukoya, a shadow loomed. His name was Wachonge. Soon, the river would run red. Beyond the rolling hills of Malakisi, a storm was gathering. For seasons uncounted, the Bukusu had clashed with Bamia over land, cattle, and honor. Raids and counter-raids were common, but never before had they faced a foe like Wachonge. He was not just a warrior, he was a force of nature. From his Lukoba, which is a fortress of sharpened stakes and deep trenches, he ruled with iron precision, gathering fighters from the Barwa, Bakisila, Bakoyonjo, and even the fearsome Bamasai. His raids were no longer skirmishes, but calculated strikes cutting off Bukusu trade routes and challenging the control of sacred lands. To the Bukusu, to let him continue unchecked would be unthinkable. And so, under the Mugumo tree, the war leaders of the Bukusus, the Nigerians, convened. The air was thick with tension as men of wisdom and war debated their path ahead. 1. Walusaka. 2. Musuya wa Wanjara. 3. Mamayu wa Wamambe. 4. Wasilwa of Bakiabi. 5. Wanambisi. And 6. Makona from Ebobolo. All these leaders spoke their voices steady and their faces grim. Yet, one voice carried heavier than the rest. His name was Situma son of Wanaumbwa. The seer whose visions had never faltered stood before them, his eyes clouded by prophecy. I have seen the rivers run red with our blood, he warned. Hamukoya will carry the voices of the dead. If you march blindly, you will not return. A murmur spread through the warriors. Some scoffed, some shuddered. We are warriors, not frightened children, one elder sneered. If you fear the fight, Situma, wear luiliche and stay behind, which is a woman's skin cloak. Situma said nothing, only shaking his head. He did not argue. Prophecy needed no defense. Instead, he laid out his vision. Attack from the north, cross at Muifubuho, which is the cattle ford, and let the sign be your ally, blinding the enemy. And one final warning, do not eat from the enemy's hands. Do not eat from the enemy's hands. The elders waved him away. They were warriors. They had fought before. they would fight again. The drums of war thundered. The warriors sharpened their spears, and Situma, knowing his warnings had been cast aside, uttered only one last phrase. Sikayile mbama lesi. Whatever can be cured can be endured. The morning air trembled with the beat of Liraka war drums. Smoke from sacred fires curled into the sky as the Bukusu warriors prepared to march. Women and children gathered into Lienge, their eyes reflecting a mix of pride and fear. The warriors, their bodies smeared with ochre, danced in a fierce display of strength, their chants of Elale Elale rolling like thunder through the village. Mothers fastened charms of bone and herbs around their sons' necks, whispering prayers of their safe return. The elders, clad in their finest cloaks, raised their hands to Wele Kakaba, beseeching the spirits of their ancestors. Goats and chickens were sacrificed, their blood pooling at their warriors' feet, a gift to the gods, a promise of victory. And then, at the edge of the gathering, Situma stood apart silent, watching, waiting. His heart was heavy, for he had already seen what lay ahead. The night before, the ancestors had spoken to him in a dream. He had seen the Malakisi, Tisi, Menu, Ndakaru, and Kamukoya rivers running red, not with the blood of the enemy, but with that of his own people. He had seen warriors falling like maize before the harvest. He had heard the wails of mothers mourning sons who will never return. At dawn, he stepped forward. His voice was low but unshaken. "Turn back," he said. "If you march as planned, the rivers will drink your blood." The warriors laughed. They were warriors. They had fought before. They would fight again. Situma clenched his jaw. He knew their minds were set, but still gave them his final counsel. "Cross at Muifubuho. Attack from the north. Let the sun be your ally. And whatever you do, again, whatever you do, do not eat from the enemy's hands." A warrior smirked. "Perhaps you should wear luilike if you fear battle, Situma." The crowd roared with laughter. Situma said nothing. He only turned away, whispering under his breath, "Sikayile mbama lesi." The war horns blew. The Bukusu marched. By midday, they reached the banks of River Kamukoya. The warriors waded into the shallows, their spears glinting in the sunlight. And then, a fatal choice. Situma's plan had been clear. Cross at Muifubuko, attack from the north and strike downhill. But as the Nigerians flashed with confidence, saw a shortcut, a faster crossing point, one that could bring them straight to Chonge's gates. They ignored the seer's warnings. Situma exhaled slowly. The river spoke to those who listened, and today it sighed, not with the relief of the living, but with the burden of the dead yet to come. Then, as they climbed the hills beyond the river, the sun rose higher, blinding them. The very thing meant to be their ally had turned against them. The warriors, sweating under its glare, squinted at the path ahead, not realizing they were walking into the jaws of the beast. Chonge was waiting, and he had already set his trap. The Bukusu warriors stormed forward with their cries splitting the air. Elale, elale. Spears flew like lightning, shields clashed, and arrows hissed through the wind. The first ranks of Chonge's defenders wavered, falling back beneath the furious assault. The Bukusu pressed on, their shields locked, their blades thirsting for blood. Victory seemed within reach, then Chonge moved. From the heart of Lukoba, he rode, his spear gleaming in the morning sun. His warriors who had feigned retreat suddenly regrouped with chilling precision. From the hills surrounding the fort, warriors emerged. Barwa, Bakisila, Bakamulyungu, Bakoyonjo, and the Bamasai, hidden reinforcements that had been held in wait. The Bukusu were now surrounded. The war cries of the enemies shook the earth, and the sky seemed to darken. The battle turned against them. And then came Chonge's sorcery. A black bull, charmed with Kimwendo, charged through the Bukusu ranks, its hooves kicking up dust, and warriors tumbled in confusion. Chonge's men feigned surrender, offering the Bukusu roasted meat, Situma's warning. But hunger and exhaustion blinded them to wisdom. They ate, the curses took hold, legs grew heavy, arms slackened, minds clouded. Their strength bled away even as their enemy closed in. The sun climbed higher. It blinded them. The very thing meant to be their ally was now their enemy, its golden light piercing their eyes as they struggled uphill. Defenseless beneath the storm of arrows raining from the Chonge's forces, the warriors began to falter. Spears found their marks. The battle formations broke apart. Panic set in. Some tried to retreat only to be cut down by Chonge's reinforcements waiting at the riverbanks. Situma, the prophet who had foreseen this doom, stood amidst the chaos. He did not flee, he fought. A spear found his chest. As he fell, his voice rose one last time. Sikhayile mbamalesi. Whatever cannot be cured can be endured. The warriors who had once marched with such pride now lay broken across the battlefield. The river Kamukoya, once a giver of life, ran red with Bukusu blood. It was over. The prophecy had come to pass. And to this day, the Bukusu remember, Nakanywa nahamela senywa mukamukoya. However drunk I may be, I cannot drink water from Kamukoya, for it is a river that remembers the dead. The Bukusu licked their wounds. Many moons passed, yet the scar of Wachonge did not fade. The elders mourned their fallen, the warriors grieved their shame, and the rivers whispered the names of the dead. Situma's prophecy had been fulfilled, and now the Bukusu carried his warning in their hearts. But a wounded warrior does not die, he sharpens his spear. Unfortunately, Situma had died. Among them stood Kikai Waweswa, a warrior from the Babulo clan. Known for his discipline and wisdom, he gathered the elders, warriors, and seers, speaking not of vengeance, but of redemption. We did not lose because we were weak, he told them. We lost because we abandoned wisdom. And so they turned to Singuru, the prophet of Bamumuki, a seer whose visions were sharper than spears. Singuru retreated into solitude. For days, he fasted, speaking only to the ancestors and the wind. When he returned, he carried a mukhendo, which is a gourd, filled with a powerful concoction of herbs and spirits. His voice was like thunder. Chonge will not fall by steel alone. The spirits must fight with us. He ordered the warriors to prepare an endurume, which is an uncastrated he-goat, one infused with powerful magic. When the time comes, he instructed, leave its carcass at the entrance of Lukoba. This will break Chonge's power. Then he gave 3 warnings. 1. Do not eat the enemy's food, for their sorcery is strong. 2. Do not strike until the enemy touches the carcass, for his own hands must call his death. 3. Do not break ranks, for unity is stronger than steel. The warriors listened. This time, they will not repeat their mistakes. At dawn, they marched. The Bukusu warriors moved like shadows, creeping towards Chonge's Lukoba under the cover of night. Singuru's enchanted goat was placed at the entrance, the carcass still warm. Then they waited. As the sun climbed, Chonge emerged. His gaze swept over the battlefield, his warriors waiting at his side. Then his eyes fell on the carcass. Suspicion flickered in his face, but his pride was stronger than his caution. He stepped forward. He touched the meat, and in that moment, the magic of Singuru was unleashed. Chonge reached for his charms, but the spirits no longer answered. His mouth formed incantations, but the air swallowed them whole. The power he had wielded against his enemies now turned against him. The once mighty warlord, who had crushed the Bukusu with fire and sorcery, now fell to his knees, powerless. This moment was all the Bukusu needed. Elale, Elale, they stormed the fort, their war cries shaking the earth. Chonge's men stripped off their confidence, fought without direction. One by one, they fell. The battle was over, but the sun reached its peak. The mighty Lukoba, once an impenetrable fortress, lay in ruins. The last of Chonge's warriors fled into the hills, their leader fallen. And as the Bukusu stood victorious, Singuru spoke one last time. The rivers remember blood, but today they remember victory. Chonge was dead, and the Wachonge belonged to the Bukusu once more. One thing about the Bukusu do not forget. The river Kamukoya, which once flowed red with their blood, remained a silent witness to the pain of Wachonge's first battle. The elders spoke of the fallen, of Situma's warnings unheeded, of the night when the Bukusu warriors had marched with pride but returned with only silence and loss. But loss does not kill a people, forgetting does. The second battle, which is the fall of the Wachonge, was more than just a revenge, it was a redemption. Under Kikai Waweswa, the Bukusu had learned that a warrior's greatest weapon is not just the spear, but wisdom. They had fought with the strength of their ancestors, with the spirits at their side, and this time they had listened. Victory did not just reclaim Wachonge, it restored the Bukusu spirit. The defeat had scattered them. The victory brought them together. Chonge's Lukoba, once a fortress of fear, now lay in ruins. The very place where the Bukusu had suffered humiliation became the symbol of the greatest triumph. Clans that had been divided by the bitterness of the loss now stood together in celebration. But in the echoes of war, the elders spoke softly. Never again shall we ignore the wisdom of our prophets. Never again shall we ignore the wisdom of our prophets. You see, victory will always fade, but stories remain. Wachonge was not just a battle. It became a lesson, a tale told by grandfathers to their sons, a song sung during ceremonial gatherings, the proverb whispered in times of caution. However drunk I may be, I cannot drink water from Kamukoya. The river, once a place of hope and passage, had become a graveyard of pride. The proverb became a reminder of folly, of arrogance, of the cost of ignoring the wisdom of the elders. Even today, the Bukusu invoke these words to warn those who refuse to listen, those who walk blindly into fate. The spirits of Wachonge lived on, in the names of warriors, in the songs of women, in the prayers of the elders. They remind the Bukusu of where they fell and where they rose again. And as long as the river flows, they will never be forgotten. But just as the Bukusu reclaimed their land, another enemy approached. Not a warrior, not a Chonge, but an empire. They did not fight with spears, but with guns, laws, and chains. They came with flags, papers, and promises, but their true weapons were betrayal and brute force. And so, as the Wachonge faded into memory, another war began. The British were coming. This time, the Bukusu would not just fight for their pride, they would fight for their very own survival. The drums of revolt will beat once again.